Anyone who's done it knows working the overnight shift can be a pretty tough thing.
Can be, but did you know it can affect your health? People who work odd hours are at higher risk of heart disease and certain cancers. CBS 19's Haley Wilgus has important information for those of us who don't exactly work 9 to 5. It's tonight's CBS 19 special report.
Studies show up to 50% of night shift workers report falling asleep on the job at least once a week. The World Health Organization has even classified shift work as a probable carcinogen. The World Health Organization has even classified shift work as a probable carcinogen.
Shift work and colorectal cancer. Is there a link? And should the NIH fund our study examining the association between alternative shift work and colorectal cancer? What is colorectal cancer? It's cancer of the colon and/or the rectum, and in the United States, colorectal cancer is the third most common cancer, causing over 140,000 new cases of cancer every year. And it's the second leading cause of cancer death, responsible for over 50,000 deaths each year. The good news is, if colorectal cancer is caught early, it can be cured. Just look at the difference in survival rates. If caught early at stage 1, the survival rate is 74%. But if caught late at stage 4, the survival rate is only 6%. So how is colorectal cancer detected? Well, you get a colonoscopy, which is generally recommended every 10 years starting at the age of 50. And during a colonoscopy, your colon will be examined with a camera. Now, I know that doesn't sound fun, but remember, you'll be sedated during the process. And if any precancerous polyps are discovered, they can be removed during the colonoscopy.
Do you want to get a colonoscopy? No. Do you want to get colorectal cancer? No.
Dr. Ricky, would you get a colonoscopy if you knew it decreased your risk for colorectal cancer?
I would, yes.
So what's worse, getting a colonoscopy, which is a little bit of discomfort, or waiting until you have late-stage colorectal cancer, which will probably lead to death.
Have you ever worked rotating shifts, evening shifts, or night shifts?
Right now, rotating shifts.
Did you know that working shift work can increase your risk for colorectal cancer?
No.
That working shift work increases your chances for cancer.
I did not know that.
Did you know that working shift work, evening shifts, or night shifts would increase your risk for colorectal cancer?
No.
Okay, this presentation is about colonoscopy. The U.S. Prevention Services Task Force recommends routine screening for people aged 50 to 75 years. There are 3 ways to get screened. One is high sensitivity fecal occult blood test, or the FOBT. It looks for hidden blood in 3 different stool samples, and it's done every year. 2 is flexible sigmoidoscopy. A lighted tube is used to check the walls of the rectum and part of the colon, and it's done every 5 years, with FOBT done every 3 years. And finally, there is colonoscopy. A lighted tube is used to check the walls of the rectum and the entire colon. It's done every 10 years, and it's also used as a follow-up diagnostic test. So those are the 3 ways to get screened for colon cancer.
Did you know that 15 to 20% of the working population is involved in some kind of shift work? This could be either because the work requires intercontinental travel or because it requires night work. This lifestyle can disrupt the natural sleep-wakefulness cycle. Shift work has varied definitions, but the type of shift work we are focusing on is the one that entails lack of sleep, or light during night periods or biological night. Shift work that includes night work are the most disrupted for the circadian clock. since sunlight is the most important circadian time cue in humans. But how do these clocks or rhythms work? The human body has structures of time. We'll call them oscillators. These oscillators create rhythms that are superimposed upon trends. These trends can be development and aging. The variations of these rhythms can range from milliseconds to hours, or even months. In the circadian rhythms, the oscillators work with a variety of genes to create a feedback system or cycle. In this system, some gene products might accumulate to inhibit the clock gene function or are removed out of the feedback cycle to allow the clock function to continue. A central oscillator located in the hypothalamus controls the rest of these oscillators. The central oscillator is kept in place by our surrounding or light-night alteration. Every time a person is forced to adhere to a new activity-list schedule, such as those with shift works, that person must undergo a phase readjustment. In this phase, there is a disruption in the sequence and biological ordering of the rhythmic events, promoting a desynchronization within the oscillator mechanism. And the exposure to frequent phase shifts may be linked to colon cancer and breast cancer.
Not a whole lot of studies have looked for relationships between different shift work and the colorectal cancer. The Nurses' Health study lasted 10 years, and they found that nurses who worked in night shifts had higher risk of the colorectal cancer. People have also found that lack of sleep makes for a higher risk of the colorectal cancer. Specifically, they found that those who slept less than 6 hours per cycle had a 50% higher risk of the colorectal cancer than those who had sleep cycles longer than 6 hours. So, seeing a gap in knowledge, we decided to search for relationships between shift work and the colorectal cancer. To start with, more than 90% of people who get the colorectal cancer are over 50 years old. This means we are only looking at persons that are over 50 with no other cancers. But one group has the colorectal cancer and the other group doesn't. Even though there are these two groups, they are matched by age and gender. We think that those persons over 50 who work in the evening, nights, or rotating days and nights have higher rates of the colorectal cancer. The group of those with the colorectal cancer will be chosen from Harris Health System, and the comparison group of those with no cancer will be picked from people who know those with the colorectal cancer. But they can't be blood relatives. Estimates say we will need a total of 500 people with the colorectal cancer, and for each of those 500, 3 matches with no cancer. Because some people won't want to do the study, we will start with choosing 770 with the colorectal cancer and 5 matches with no cancer. All these people will be asked about their job history and work schedules over the telephone. Once this data is compiled, we will analyze it and get the answer to our question. It is important to remember that the colorectal cancer has many other risk factors like diet, exercise, obesity, smoking, alcohol, and since we know this, we will account for these in our figuring. So, if those persons over 50 who work in the evening, nights, or rotating days and nights do have higher rates of the colorectal cancer, we could provide support for encouraging earlier screening guidelines for these workers. Establishing a link between the colorectal cancer and alternative shift work could also encourage work environment updates for these workers, such as making standard shift times whenever possible, changing fake lighting to be more like natural light, and educating workers about the colorectal cancer risks.
study.
You're in the shot. You're gonna hold one of these.
Do that study.
Do that study.
Study.